Hi everyone, Jen here from Coalition Snow from Lady Parts, trying something new out in today's newsletter. I am launching a podcast, the Lady Parts podcast, and for my very first guest, I wanted to invite Mallory from Ewer. Here's what I need all of you to know about this podcast. No one knows how it's going to go. She already asked me if she could swear, and I said yes. Okay. And so this is bound to be really interesting and really good. And this isn't going, I don't have any questions that you can go find out from her LinkedIn or from her website. I really want our time together here, both my time with Mallory, because I love talking to her, but also your time as the listener, to learn something new or gain some new insight or feel inspired or just, do anything that's better than, screaming into the void. So that's what we're here to do today. So, Mallory, welcome to my podcast.
Thanks for having me, Jen. I'm happy to
It's
be here. I also think that's so fun. What a cool opening. We are going to talk about stuff that you can't Google about me. So that's fun and interesting to me.
Yeah. Well, you and I talk all the time, and I think we're both interesting. So this is sort of like taking some of our long walks and possible rants and putting them out into the world. So everyone, you're welcome. But before we get into it, for people who do not know who you are and what you do, can you tell them a little bit about yourself and your?
Yeah. So I am Mallory, and I own a company called Ewer that is an apparel brand. We make clothes for original individuals and mostly women. But I started it with $100 sewing machine in my parents' basement when I was 22. And I feel like that's an important piece of the story because I didn't have a concept or a business plan or anything. I've just kind of been on this really weird accidental journey for the last 13 years that has been super chaotic and really challenging and really exciting and very rewarding. But my whole life is this brand. It's been my entire career. It's been everything. I'm so fully immersed in it. I spend every single waking minute working on it. So I am Ewer and Ewer is me is really kind of how that is. There's so much of me and my brand and it evolves as I do. So yeah, there's not a lot of distinction, honestly, between the two.
That's not easy.
No, it's really hard. It's very hard to detach. It's hard to separate. It's even I think from an outward facing lens too, people don't really see the separation because I don't really exude a separation. So I was in Costco the other day and someone shouted at me, "Hey, you were." It's yeah, there really is no separation.
Mhm. Do you remember that time I asked you if you were still married?
Yeah,
Like
I am.
that's how hectic it can be to run your own small business. You laugh now, but that's a fair question. Like, Mallory, are you still married?
Totally. And honestly, I think that if I had a different relationship, it probably wouldn't be. But my husband and I last week actually celebrated 19 years together. So I think that it's he's known me since I was a kid, basically, and has just seen so much of the before and the during and the after that this is all he knows of me and all it's just our whole relationship basically.
He signed up for it.
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely.
Okay. Well, I'm happy to hear that you're still married. It did cross my mind. I was like, you're going to ask this question, and that could not go well. But also, that's what we're going to do on the pod. So here we are.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me ask you this. So when did you first realize that you wanted to do this? Like this whole manufacturing your own apparel in the United States? Like what was so bad that you decided to take this on?
That point in my business where I decided to build my own production
Yeah,
or just in
well,
general.
so just so that people know, you built your own production factory, you manufacture in the United States, and anyone who knows anything about manufacturing, number one, it's not easy anywhere, but it's difficult everywhere, right? But the costs associated with it and just all of it is so much. So What was going on that you were like, I'm going to make clothing and I'm going to make it in the United States? Like you've been so committed to that in a way that a lot of people would have been like, I'm out of here. I'm out of here. So
Totally.
why, like when did you first realize you wanted to do this? Like really do it. Like maybe not like I'm going to sew on the serger in the basement, but like the like I'm full on in and like what why?
Well, kind of accidentally, again, just sort of theme of the story. I started making stuff myself because it was easy, because I had like those tools at my disposal and could figure them out. And then when I outgrew my own production, it just kind of, US manufacturing just sort of like presented itself to me. I was at an event selling my stuff, and the booth neighbor next to me was also a brand in Arizona that owned their own factory. And I was telling them how like I couldn't keep up with production. And they were like, and of course, everybody, when you have an apparel brand or any kind of brand, as you scale, two things you hear most often are when you're going to be on Shark Tank and when are you moving production to China. And so they were basically like, we have a factory, we can make stuff for you. And I was like, that sounds awesome. And so easy. And I don't have to figure out how to navigate international trade and have brokers and have production managers and translators and work in different time zones. Like that just seems super easy for me. So I just kind of started that because it was presented to me, and that's kind of just how it continued. Then it became a piece of my story because it became kind of a unique thing to do. And then the struggles of US manufacturing and the just sort of things that would happen to me became a piece of my story. And all the negative experiences that I had with it became a way to engage with people and a way to talk about how stuff is made. Because I think because I was so close to it and because it was domestic, I have visibility into production in a way that I might not have had if I hadn't been making stuff in America. And so all these like little things that I was learning about how clothes were made, I thought were really interesting and cool. And you have no idea about any of those when you just go to a store and pick something off the rack. So I felt like sharing those with my people. And then, over the next decade, I had a lot of issues with production. I was really at a size that was very challenging. I was not big enough to be taken seriously by factories that were good and like knew their shit and could actually produce in a professional way. But I was outgrowing smaller factories. So I was like changing factories a lot. I was learning a lot about how to produce and how to be a good production partner. And a lot of mistakes were made. And like most of them were not mine. And there was no accountability. All of these factories were run by dudes who were old and had been in the industry forever. And here I am, this like girl at the time in my 20s who like didn't know anything about making clothes. And people would fuck stuff up in major ways. Like probably lost $1 million to production mistakes. And like, as a small cash strapped business, you're having this whole production run, $100,000 worth of clothing arrives and it is trash and it's not sellable. And because you made it in the US, you have to sell it for a lot of money. And you're like, I can't get somebody to pay me $150 for this hoodie that has two different length arms and a hood that's sewn on backwards. Like those were the kinds of things that we were having happen.
Okay,
Or
watching this right now, like I am giving Mallory this look like, are you fucking kidding me? And all I'm thinking in my head is Mallory is such a nice person. She's so much nicer than me because I would have fucking murdered someone. Like like your entire production run lands and you have, I would have lost it. Yeah,
yeah, we had one batch of leggings show up that was miniature, like would fit
I do.
toddlers
I
because
remember this. I remember that.
totally, because there was a file conversion issue at the factory and they didn't catch it and it wasn't sampled properly. We had factories lose our fabric and
I
we could
remember that.
prove on the shipping documents that it had been delivered because the weight of the pallet showed that it was on that pallet and then just poof, it disappears and they don't cover that extra cost. The amount of times that I had to get attorneys involved was very significant and legal fees. I had a whole batch of production in 2020. It was 2020. It was a big collaboration that we pre-sold, and I think we sold like $70,000 worth of it, which was a really big deal for us at the time. And I mean, it's a lot of money. We
Yeah.
pre-sold this to try and like get through a period where we really weren't going to have a lot of inventory. And then we went into production, and the printing company, they were leggings and crop tops, and they were all these layered. The art was all layered in Photoshop, and there were all these labels of like the laser lines for the cutter and the sizes of the pieces of clothing. And the printer printed all those hidden layers and their laser guides. And so I got the sewn sample, and it had like red laser cutter guidelines all over it. And we had to scrap the whole thing. I had to refund all the customers. I had to take out a line of credit to do it. And then that kicked off a period of 8 months without any inventory because factory shut down for COVID. So that was like 8 months with no revenue. And that was when we really started talking about like the shit show that is manufacturing, and particularly American manufacturing. And then finally, I bounced around in that year in 2020 to like 5 different factories. I would be like, okay, we need production. Let's get all the stuff there. We get it all set up. It would take like 3 weeks. We get samples. We'd be like, great, let's go into production. And then 2 months would go by and they wouldn't have anything. And they wouldn't even have a sample, and they would have no estimate of when they would have it done. So I'd be like, okay, send more guys in a van over to get all the fabric and move it on to another factory. So we just had like guys in vans running around LA for all of 2020, moving production around to try and get something made. And then when we finally did get it made, we continued to have production problems and quality problems. And I was like, I'm putting the most important responsibility of my business, which is the product, in somebody else's hands. And they are just fumbling the ball every time. And I can't deal with this anymore. Like every shipment that showed up was a disaster waiting to be unpacked. And so I decided then that I was going to have to build my own factory if I wanted to stay in business. So I started a crowdfunding campaign and raised some money to buy a building and start a factory. I had really no idea how to do this. And that whole process of like securing a building and the team and the equipment and everything took a few years, but ultimately in 2023, we opened a factory and we made extremely high quality product. Like we had no quality issues. We learned everything about efficiency and lean manufacturing and equipment operation and how to be machine mechanics. We went through like machine mechanic school, and we had so many operational systems that we developed in house, and it was really cool. But ultimately, it was really slow, and it was super expensive, and it was really stressful for me as the main sales employee. Like at the time, I was the only employee responsible for revenue, and I was working like from 5 a.m. to like 11 p.m. every day. And I was like very exhausted.
Hence my
And
question, are you still married?
yeah,
Yeah.
totally. I was having like a lot of physical impacts of working that kind of hours. And we just like couldn't get it to the point of profitability that it needed to be at. And a year into that situation, we ended up getting connected with a dream factory partner that I've been dreaming of for my entire career. So we can grow to whatever size we could possibly imagine with them, and they can make things for so much cheaper and more efficiently than we could. And so we just decided we're trying to compete with like a non-competitor right now. So let's cut what we're doing here, save money. We're saving like they were making things for like a quarter of what we were making them for. So we ended up closing our own production in December and having everything made there. We never made 100% in house, which was like a misconception by a lot of people. We only made like 50%. And yeah, it's been really stress free since we stopped doing that.
That's great. It's June, so you have 5 months of it being stress free. I'm gonna check in with you in a few more months to see
Yeah.
where you're at. Okay, so everything you just said, there's like two questions that I don't know which one to ask next. One, the obvious one, tell me about a time you almost quit and what pulled you back from the edge. Because literally everything you just said, I'm like, holy shit, I don't even, and I do know because I've done similar things with Coalition, like driving to the port of San Francisco and demanding to get my goods out of the warehouse, or else I was going to chain myself naked to the loading dock. Like that actually happened. Like the things we have to do to get to make this happen. So I want to
Did
talk
that
to
work? Was that a good threat?
well, I didn't have to take my clothing off, my clothes off. I
I
don't know if
guess
that
it
was good
was.
or bad. I really scared the young man I was talking to. He just looked at me and said, "Okay, ma'am," and disappeared. And then like 5 minutes later, the door of the loading dock opens up and there's all my pallets of skis and boards. And we had three vehicles and we were like, fuck yeah, let's do it. And we like hand loaded three, like all these pallets into vehicles and drove them back to Reno, like through a well, it just snowed. So like the roads had been closed. And like, this is how I spent New Year's Day. And I think it would have been 2023. So yeah, we
The
like do
things we
it, and then
do.
we'll just like then you go to sleep and you're like, oh, that was okay. It's like type 2 fun, like owning your own business, manufacturing in any capacity. It's type 2 fun. When you're doing it, you're like, this is fucking awful. And then you get on the other side of it and you're like, oh, that was fun. Okay, I'm ready for the next thing. There's something really wrong with
Yeah.
us. But so I wanted to like have these two questions, like, how have you like been able to pull yourself back from the edge of quitting? But then the other thing I want to make sure we get to too is like, here you are talking about this commitment to manufacturing in the United States, but you've also become Instagram's go-to brand about tariffs. So why don't we start with that, and then we'll come back to how you pull yourself back from like the ledge of I'm fucking blowing this up. I'm out of here. So yeah, so you've always manufactured in the United States, and yet the amount of content that you have created about tariffs, which has sparked controversy. I've jumped into the comments occasionally and checked because I'm like, this is the dumbest comments I've
Oh,
ever.
it's so dumb.
Let me get in there for a second. Maybe it'll make Mallory laugh. That's all I'm trying to do. I'm not going to solve any problems here, but fuck, good Lord. So, why, Mallory, has it been so important for you to dedicate a sizable amount of time and energy into creating content, specifically reels, about tariffs?
Well, I spend a lot of time making content that's educational because I really believe that you have to create the customer that you want, and that marketing is training for your customer. And so if I need them to know something, I have to tell them. And being made in America means we have a higher price point, and people are always going to question that and wonder why it's so high. But if I can make a bunch of content that explains exactly where the prices come from and what the value is, then people will stop asking that question. And they have. It's worked super well over the years. Before tariffs became the thing that they are this year, we have been dealing with them because I think another major misconception of Made in America is that it's not 100% made in America in most cases.
Yeah.
We don't have a super robust textile industry in this country, particularly in synthetic, technical, active fabrics. So we import a lot of fabrics. And we have had an extremely high tariff on one of our highest volume and most popular fleece has come from China. And I thought it was, back when I started talking about it, I thought it was really relevant and interesting to talk about because the company that used to make it, which is Polartec, they are, if you're in the outdoor industry and you make apparel, you know about Polartec. They make fleece for every single big brand that's on the shelves of every store. And they used to make fleece in America. They used to make this specific fleece in America. And then they stopped making it in America and they took it to China. And there's really nobody that can compete with their quality and their brushing. And so we tried to make our own for a couple of years with some other mills, super inconsistent. And ultimately, for sustainability of product reasoning, we ended up going to this Chinese fleece because we just couldn't have that other stuff diluting the brand. So we, prior to 2025, we were already paying like a 45% tariff, which was really high and interesting to pay such a high tariff on something that's made in the USA. So I just felt like that was an interesting story to tell because it increased our prices dramatically. And it, one of our most popular things is a fleece dress. There are a lot of other fleece dressmakers out there. Our fleece dress is almost $200. It's a lot
Yeah.
more than the other fleece dresses. So felt like explaining where the pricing has come from was part of educating the customer, and the tariffs were like part of that pricing explanation. So then I made a video about that, like right as tariffs like really dramatically changed. And I was wearing a very annoying outfit that people hated. And so they just kind of went crazy in the comments and it went viral. And then I was like, okay, this is kind of a fun thing to talk about. But it was really just for kind of the eye opening component of it. Like, made in America with Chinese fabrics is a real thing and a real like experience of many brands.
Well, and not just an experience of brands in the outdoor industry, but sort of everything you buy in this country. Um, one of the things I always talk to people about is, so you and I are different. I manufacture overseas. I have no interest in shifting my manufacturing to the United States. I have tried to manufacture in the United States multiple times with these small factories closing down. Same issues. Like they close down. They can't manufacture at scale. The quality's inconsistent. Lovely human beings, but just not where we need it to be. So we've been manufacturing overseas with this third generation Japanese family, which has been incredible. And we make a fucking fantastic product. I'm
Yes,
not
you
willing
do.
to risk the quality of my product to appease a grumpy little boy. Like I'm not going to fall in line just because the new administration says you should make things in the United States. I'm not I'm not going to jump because you say jump. You cannot, like, the quality of the manufacturing in China, and not just like to your point, like getting this fleece. You couldn't you There's so many things you can't get in the United States because we don't make it. Like, we've never made it. We don't have the tooling, we don't have the raw materials, we don't have the skilled labor. It just doesn't exist. So this idea of like moving all manufacturing immediately to the United States would result in the US consumer having to pay so much more money and getting a fucking shit product. I don't know. Are we great again,
Totally.
everyone? Are we fucking great? So, okay, so that explains.
Yeah.
I had to digress. Sorry,
Well, I think that's an interesting point, actually. Like this whole like greatness.
Yeah.
There is this wild belief going around. I mean, how many times have you heard somebody say like, "Oh, we have to make it in America because everything made in America is better," or they see a made in America product against a made in China product and they're like, "Oh, made in America is better quality." It's just not true. Like in some situations, it is for sure, but this idea that like America is great at making stuff is really completely false. And it's also, I think it just stems from like a very problematic idea that like we are superior and there are roots of racism in it for sure. And like this idea that China makes a shit product is completely false in many, and I would say maybe most manufacturing scenarios. China is exponentially superior than we are because they have been building their supply for generations, where ours has just fallen off. There are things that you can only make in China that you cannot make in America. Like,
Hmm.
and I think that that is just like a very weird thing that needs to be dispelled in this whole like hoorah made in America patriotism thing is
Yeah,
like it's frustrating because like I am made in America. I really enjoy it. I probably will always have a product made in America and never take it overseas, but it certainly does not mean that it is superior and that every product is superior.
exactly. Well, and I just want to repeat in case our listeners miss this. So much of this narrative about the quality of craftspersonship from China is racist. It is based in racism and American exceptionalism and, that superiority. The interesting thing is China will absolutely win this trade war because Americans don't understand the reach China has around the rest of the world, particularly in Africa. Particularly just today, they announced zero tariffs. They want to enter into a zero tariff deal with the continent of Africa, which, in case anybody wants to put that into perspective, you can fit like almost three entire United States land wise into the continent of Africa. It's 54 countries and they have a significant emerging middle class. So China's like, okay, Trump, what, like, whatever. Like, again, are we winning? Are we great again? But yeah, so I get this, that you're always like, there's these things about manufacturing in the United States that people don't always understand, and so you've been educating your customer. I didn't realize that people didn't like your outfits. Was that something that made you quit, or are there that wanted to make you quit? Do do comments in do comments on Instagram make you want to quit? Yes or no? And if not, what has made you want to quit and what has pulled you back from the ledge? Also,
The comments
petty
on
fucking
Instagram,
bitches. Petty fucking bitches.
oh my God. I will say that comments on TikTok, when I first started TikTok 3 years
Ooh,
ago, did make me want to quit. I had a
really?
video go viral overnight on TikTok. I had 10 followers. I was just fucking around and experimenting, and I made a video about a bad meeting I had with REI, and it exploded. And I woke up the next morning and looked at TikTok, and I had 1 million views and 20,000 followers. And I learned a lot about audience versus following there. So I had an audience on Instagram that had been following me for a long time, and TikTok was brand new, and people were super mean, like telling me like your armpits look fat in that dress, don't wear it, go kill yourself, like really shitty things. And it was very impactful for me because I'd
Yeah.
never dealt with that before. And my friend Kristen bought me a set of those little troll dolls, and she was like, put these on your desk, and every time you get a nasty comment, just like look at those and realize it's not serious. And it was a practice. Probably took me 6 months of dealing with a ton of hate on TikTok. And then I didn't care. And now I really don't give a shit at all about bad comments. I actually love them because I find them to be so hilarious, and they make my videos get in front of more people. It just boosts the
It's
algorithm. So
it
I
does.
actually wore that outfit. I wore this very puffy metallic vest that was super cool and from this like sculptural designer that I was really into. But I wore it because I knew people would get mad about it and they would comment and the video would get pushed in front of more people.
Mhm.
So that's my answer to that. There have been many, many times that I've wanted to quit. And I think the main thing that brings me back to the commonality between all of them is what the hell else would I do? This has been my entire career. This has been my entire job. And the longer that I do it, the more distant my semblance of something else becomes. I've worked for myself. I've had like, some random jobs when I was first getting this off the ground, but I've always worked for myself. And this has always been my career. And I just really don't know what I would do if I wasn't doing this for work. So that's kind of what I always come back to. But the beginning of 2025 was really challenging. And I haven't like talked about it a ton with people outside of my friend group, but I really did want to quit. I like had a
Oh,
just a few months ago. Like
I'm just
I would
clarifying.
say,
Yeah.
yeah, I would say even until just like a few weeks ago was something I thought about every day. But I'm leading a team of people who have chosen to be here and who are working hard. And so I had to kind of keep showing up and making them feel like I wanted to be here. But I experienced burnout, I think, for the first time. I always thought that that was a distant thing that I was immune to, I would never experience. But running the factory for 2 years was hard to put into words how challenging that was for my mental health. I was dealing with everybody else's mental health and having just like super shitty employees. And I was never getting the opportunity to like have a bad day. So
Yeah.
I think that that just really caught up with me in a big way. And being the face of the company and the person responsible for bringing every dollar in and making every piece of marketing was it was a big responsibility that kind of like when we closed down here, there was some negativity surrounding the
Yeah.
closure of it. And that was really frustrating to me because like it closed for my own mental health and like that's not okay apparently. Like you're supposed to prioritize everybody else, but like the mental health of founders is somehow like not a cool thing to talk about or not a reason to pivot a business. And that really frustrated me because I felt like I wasn't able to show up in an authentic way about what I was dealing with when that's a big piece of my brand is like transparency and being authentic. But I had a really hard time and I felt super unmotivated to go to work. And our revenue completely showed that I was in a not great place. And then, couple that with like everything else that was going on in the world, it felt like it was kind of hopeless. And I definitely imagined what a different line of work would look like often. And I just wasn't feeling excited. But then I did just like, have these little glimmers of hope. I think it felt like kind of predictable. I felt like I got into a rut So I had to kind of break out from that and be like, what is it about my business that I really enjoy doing? And how can it not feel like a machine? Because it's been going on for 13 years now. What can I do that feels fun and exciting and new? Because that's what keeps me motivated. So I found some fun and exciting and new things to do.
Yeah.
And I got excited about it again. I think like in April, I actually took myself on a little trip. I did a solo road trip over to Seattle where I did a photo shoot for our upcoming product launches. And I met up with a very, very good friend of mine. And we did a little pop up.
Mm.
And I got to like engage with customers in a physical way and hear their excitement over the brand and the product. And I realized like there are a lot of people out there who really care about what we're doing and would be very sad if we stopped doing this or if I wasn't interested in this. And then I kind of realized like I'm not in my bubble anymore. There are tens of thousands of people out there, virtually and physically, who really do care about me and care about me having success in my brand. And that really motivated me. It's like community, like that tactile experience with community for sure.
Yeah. That's so funny you bring so number one, I was in the pool with this person, your very good friend, talking just the other day, talking to her about like we have to get out of the hamster wheel. Like we can't be in the wheel. Like that I feel like is the thing that so many small business owners are facing. And I'm sure that there's people, people who have careers who maybe don't own their own business feel similarly, just being stuck in the hamster wheel. But it just like we have to figure out how to get out of it. And that is a pivot. Like we all need to pivot in some sort of way, and that's going to look different for everyone. But like we can't we can't do this for our lives if that's how we feel. And I've said this to people
No.
forever, like this is what I'm doing. Like there is, and not necessarily that I'm always going to be selling skis and snowboards, but like I'm going to be doing something in this space around retail products, women, adventure, outdoor. Like I'm going to be and working for myself. I'm going to be doing all of that for my life.
Yeah.
Because I already like I feel like I'm blowing it on marrying rich. My girlfriend's a bike
There's still
mechanic.
time.
Well, my girlfriend's a bike mechanic. Like
Oh,
I mean, my bikes look good and they're fixed, but like, so we've got that.
maybe we'll have a shortage of bike mechanics in the next
Yeah.
iteration of
Well,
America.
yeah, it's just like I feel like I've missed the boat. I'm just like making a lot of money there. But yeah, there's just like we have to as business owners, we have to take care of ourselves because there's no one else to fucking do it. There is no
Yeah.
one else to do it. And so if we can't feel good every day, like when we wake up and say like I'm ready to do this, there is no business. There is no jobs for anyone else. There's nothing. And it really does to some extent need to be about us.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably why like some founders leave and other people come in and there's, all these variations of what that looks like. But really
I
figuring
agree
out
with
how to
that.
get out of the fucking wheel is so important.
Yeah, I think it's tricky too in the wake of the millennial girl boss businesses too, where like, I mean, so many of those have come crashing down, all of
Yeah,
them maybe.
yeah,
And growing up or like growing up within a business during a time when that was really glamorized, I
yeah,
think is really tricky because you think that everybody has it together and you're just supposed to chase revenue and grow, grow, grow. And then there's so much behind the scenes. It's like really, really important. And a few months after I laid, again, it wasn't like I didn't have a team of like 200 people that I was laying off. Like
yeah,
we were a small team. We were a team of seven, and I laid off three people. And people made a very big deal out of it. But for the majority of the energy, people were really positive. But a few months after it all happened, I made an Instagram post that I knew was going to be kind of controversial, or I thought it was going to be kind of controversial. And I tried to open up a little bit about it. And the opening line was, I closed the factory for my own mental health. And that was like really what I did. And yes, really talented people who I really enjoyed working with and who were extremely dedicated lost their jobs. And that was really sad and a hard thing to be on the other side of. I think letting people go is really, really hard. And that's not something that's talked about often. Um, and when I made that post, I knew I was opening myself up to a lot of criticism and like people judging me. But actually, everybody was wildly supportive. And the amount of outreach and calls and DMs and texts and just thing like so many people, like hundreds of points of contact of people saying like take care of yourself because we want your brand to survive, and if you're not doing well then this brand isn't doing well. And I just thought that was like very meaningful and cool, and really that helped me to understand that there's a greater cause to all of this. It's not just about clothes, really.
Yeah. No, that's so, it's just this conversation right now is fascinating. It's exactly what I'm writing about in my newsletter. I have my other newsletter, my personal one, I'm writing all about this. So it's funny that we're talking about that. Yeah, it's a big community's
I love
everything.
that.
Community is everything.
It really is.
It's every
Yeah.
it's
and
everything.
and we're
Yeah.
trying to like imitate it in many ways. It just can't be imitated.
Uh-uh. Yeah. All right, I have one more question for you. Well,
Yeah.
maybe it's one big question, two small ones. Okay.
Okay.
So my big
Gonna take a
question,
sip of water.
take a sip of water. This is the one you told me that you wanted to you were when I asked you like which ones. So what does what is sex actually what does sex look like for you, Mallory? What does
You definitely
success?
won't find that on my LinkedIn.
Yeah, no, we won't. Nope, no one. You had no idea that by listening all the way to minute 36 that you would be learning about Mallory's sex life. I think we will just save that for another podcast.
Be a whole
Another
podcast.
like, yeah. So we'll just go back to the question: what does success actually look like for you now versus what you thought it would look like when you started?
When I started, I thought success would be the ability to live a comfortable life and like pay myself a full-time salary. So I think the goalpost has changed a lot because that obviously, like, I quit my day job and I started in on that, and that happened. And then as I got more into it and I realized like what was possible, I think the most important realization I had was that as you do this more and more, and the longer you're in business and the more hurdles that you get over and the more things that you achieve, you realize just how capable you are of anything.
Mm,
And as long as you put your mind to something, like you and you allocate the time to it, you can probably do it, which is kind of cool. And that's like you prove to yourself your ability to get to certain places. So as I began that and I understood that about myself, success definitely became a revenue goal.
mm,
And I think back to what we were just talking about with like the millennial girl boss era, like it was all revenue based.
mhm.
And so that was success to me for a while. Like, oh, I want to be a 7-figure brand. I want to be a 9-figure brand. I want to be a 10-figure brand. And then in the last year, I've realized that success actually kind of has nothing to do with work for me anymore. It has
Mm,
to do with having time for a life that I've worked my whole career to create. Because I had this crazy realization. It wasn't really that crazy, but the other day I was scrolling through my phone making content, and I was scrolling back through all these videos, all these photos of past years, and I was trying to make an ad about my story, about the last 13 years of building a business. And I realized that in 2023, well, to back up a minute, I started this brand because I played outside in the mountains. I moved to the mountains to live in them and bike in them and ski in them and run in them and do. I was obsessed with them. It's been a lifelong childhood dream of mine. And I designed clothes to be able to do those things with. And I did those. Like, I had very epic adventures and a really fun, full life. And then in 2023, as I'm scrolling back in my camera roll, I realized every single photo, every single video of me is in this building here at work.
mm,
I'm not doing anything fun. I'm not
mm,
outside. I'm not on my skis. I'm not on my bike. I'm not on a trail run. I actually stopped running because I got hurt and had so many surgeries that I gave up the things that I liked because my body couldn't handle it from all the stress of work. And that was really powerful. And that was just a few weeks ago. I realized this thing that I've been working so hard to build, like, I actually don't even have time to live that. I'm selling clothes for outdoor athletes, people to go do things outside in, and like, I'm not even doing it. And I know you and I've talked about this a lot,
yeah.
like how we run outdoor brands, but like we don't actually get any time to do these things. But to me right now, that's what success looks like. Like
Mm,
it looks like going out and living my life and having some bucket list things that don't have to do with work anymore. And I made a few of those with my best friend last week. I was like, these are the 5 things I want to do with you this summer because I want some stuff in my camera roll that is not me at my desk, me in my office, me in this building that I've worked my whole life to be able to buy. Like I want to go live. So the last 2 weeks, I've actually like been home from work before 6 o'clock. I've been cooking dinner. I've been reading books. I've knit 2 sweaters this year. And I think that, yeah, simply put, success just means like time for life and trying to have some semblance of normalcy because entrepreneurs, we're not normal at all. Our lives are not normal. We look around at our friends, and our closest friendships are all entrepreneurs because normal people have normal lifestyles that don't
mhm.
mesh with ours because we always have to cancel for other more important work things. We can never go meet for drinks at 5. We can never go do like normal things like that. And so I I think just like trying to have a normal life and being okay with like maybe sacrificing a little bit of growth to make that happen.
Love that. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mallory, thank you so much for
Yeah.
being on my podcast. Um, Before we go, one piece of gear you can't live without.
A Kula cloth. Also, she's one of my best friends, so got to give the plug,
Love,
but just so
love,
fun.
love Anastasia. Yep, cooler cloth, good one. And then people who are listening, where can they find you? I mean, there's going to be show notes and click throughs and all that, but where would you like people to go find you?
Come find me on Instagram. That's where I hang out. It's often me behind the account too. So the handle is Shop Ewer. And no, we're not called Shop Ewer. We're just called Ewer, but that was not a handle I could find. So Shop Ewer on Instagram. If you want to actually shop Ewer, go to shopewer.com. But Instagram's a pretty fun place. And then if you're ever in Missoula, we have a really cool, weird building filled with art in Missoula at 826 Kern Street, and it's open to the public. And come on in and meet us and see what's going on here.
Awesome. Mallory, thanks so much for taking the time to talk to me, share all these things, be honest about it. I don't know if it made it on the recording or if we were talking about it beforehand. Like so many times you get into podcasts or groups with other entrepreneurs and no one's like really honest. It's all about just sharing what you think people want to hear and sharing this version of yourself that you believe makes you look like you know what you're doing. And it's just, when you can kind of get down to it and say like, well, no, actually we're all figuring it out. No one really knows. And it's like this constant process and pivoting all over the place and, just doing these things to like try to get there. And that's what this means. Like we're always going to be working on this. It's never going to be perfect. It's never going to be working out just the way that we want it to. And just kind of like settling into like, this is the experience, I think makes it a lot easier. And it's good for people to know that there's other people out there who are um, not perfect, like the world would want you
Totally.
to live.
Yeah. And thank you for having me on this podcast. I think it's such a refreshing and different experience to be able to talk candidly with a friend
Hmm.
about things instead of, like you said, saying what you think people want to hear. Like being able to get deep and emotionally vulnerable with somebody is a fun experience. So thanks for providing that.
It's my pleasure. All right, everyone. Well, I hope that you've enjoyed listening to this podcast. I hope that you'll come back and join me again for my next guest. No one knows who it is. I've asked some people. We will see. Make sure you go check out Mallory on Instagram. You go to her for Instagram, you come to me for Substack. We are doing different, like, that is what we're doing. And go buy yourself a cute fleece dress or maybe some biking shorts and crop tops because they're also cute. Mallory, thanks for being here. I'll talk to you soon. I'll be texting you 20 times.